Welcome to another episode of It's Her Turn. I'm your host, Dr. Kate Dow, and today we're going to talk about the alchemy of deep breath. Now, breath has been a journey for me as a person who grew up with a lot of anxiety and didn't know it. And as I looked back over the years, I can recognize where so much of my body and my breath and my ability to feel what was going on was restricted. And so the first thing I want to say is we live in a culture that encourages and supports us to not feel what's going on. And part of the busyness and the go, 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 being in our heads, overthinking, all of this supports us being less present in our body, less engaged in our breath, and in a state of disconnection and fear. And why would we have a society that does that? Well, there's lots of points of view about that. But my view is, the less connected we are in our bodies, in our source of deeper knowing, the more easily we are controllable. Um, and that also comes in with the whole media onslaught, especially for women, right? Of disempowering our sense of self and constantly having those messages of not okayness. So, the alchemy of deep breath is powerful and transformational for those of us with anxiety and for women, especially also as a way to come back into our bodies, into our knowingness with ourselves of who we really are, and that reconnection with that deep feminine wisdom. So let's talk a little bit about the science. I got really into looking at the science over the last 10 years. And when I wrote my book, Fear Less: The Art of Using Anxiety to Your Advantage, I really wanted to bridge that connection between the ancient spiritual traditions and wisdom with the modern day science around the mind body work, around acknowledging and understanding that connection of breath, presence, um, the spiritual work around working with your inner witness, all these traditions that I'd been studying that felt so powerful and important and helpful. And I wanted to validate them with that research so that people didn't think it was just this, woo woo stuff. So I packed my book with research links, right? Every topic that I cover, I share the most recent research of that time. It was a couple of years ago, and it's still relevant today. So, what does this research say? And I'll put some links in the show notes so you can check it out as well. But most importantly, the research is talking about, as especially as we know, trauma has become a more modern mainstream concept, as well as understanding our need to do our own healing work. So when I wrote this book, it was around 2017. And for me, I'd already experienced the power of the breath. I brought in yoga and some mindfulness work and meditation into the work I was doing with women. And I saw the impact. I saw how powerful it was. And then to be able to go and grab the most recent research that was validating it was just so beautiful. So the efficacy of the breath is what I begin to talk about in the book, and understanding that our breath is this ability to come into the moment, and the impact of that coming into presence and embodiment and attention brought to our breath shifts things very quickly for us as human beings. Now, again, most of us are walking around with very shallow breaths, right? And that comes from a history of learning to contract when we're scared, to defend against life and not want to feel how challenging it is, or to, kind of block out the overstimulation of it all. So we tend to have that restriction in our breath. And so many of us breathe just in the very top section of our lungs, kind of up by the collarbone. And when we're breathing that way, we are not being able to fully access the gift and power of the breath, because we're not being able to fully bring in not only the oxygen all the way down to the bottom of our lungs so that it more easily goes right into our bloodstream, but we're not getting the full impact of what I call a complete breath for our nervous system. So if we're in shallow breath and we're tight and contracted, we automatically have our nervous system engaged in the sympathetic nervous system. It's active, it's alert, it's feeling on guard and ready to fight, flight, freeze, or flee. So that's a place that may make us feel vigilant and ready for life, but it's exhausting and it's running stress hormones through our body all day. And we're not knowing how to help our body move back into the parasympathetic, that relaxation response, that place when we feel safe. We go, okay, I can let down the defenses. I can be vulnerable. I can be in my body and experience what's happening. So, breath work directly impacts not only our nervous system, but our brain and its ability to function. It affects our body's health, right? If we have stress hormones running through it all the time, that's not good. That's harming our organs and our body's integrity. We also are impacted with our breath with mood. We can shift our mood very easily the more we learn to use the power of the breath. And then, of course, for people with anxiety, it's very potent when we learn to cultivate our breath so that it supports us. Oftentimes, when we're in anxiety, we can be in that unconscious hyperventilating state. And the idea is to come into the body, right? We do grounding, we do embodiment work so that you can drop into that slow, deep breath. And with anxiety, that can be very, very effective. Lots of research showing how it's such a powerful tool. The idea is that we're helping ourselves with breath to come truly into presence, as opposed to the mind, right? The overthinking mind, when we're stuck ruminating about the past or obsessing and worrying about the future. Those are the places with anxiety, especially, that can keep us trapped in that shallow breath. And again, a lot of people, most of my clients that I worked with over the years weren't even aware of it. And so we had to help them practice being conscious. Oh, I'm barely breathing. No wonder I'm exhausted or irritable or agitated. So it is a practice. Now let's talk about the wisdom traditions. I don't think there's any wisdom traditions that don't communicate around breath, the power, the significance, the importance of breath in yoga, and that's pretty much every yoga, including tantric yoga. It's an important part. If we look at original tantra, it's very um, earth-based, body-based, connecting to yourself and the breath and the elements and the natural world as a way of coming back into your center. And that was a well known and common practice across all cultures. It's been traced back in pretty much most cultures that there was some form of this tantric yoga, which was basically like a spiritual practice of coming into presence and connection with your true self, right? Helping you be your best in your day to day living, but also staying connected to the divine, that truth of, what's happening here in our day to day world and how we can be more connected in that infinite consciousness state. So, in yoga that I studied and was certified with many years ago, in this Kundalini yoga that I'd been doing off and on throughout my life, breath is primary. It's a huge part of Kundalini yoga, and I think that was what I loved so much about it. Is it brought me into the moment very quickly. Um, I love how Kundalini yoga brings in all of the focus of, the asana, the focus of the eyes, the hand mudras, the mantra, the breath, all 8 limbs of yoga. And this is very effective. And so, for those of you that have an interest in yoga, you might check out Kundalini yoga. Of course, all of them have different aspects that are powerful and wonderful. Um, I find that you can work with yoga in all these different stages of your life, right? When you're exhausted and you just want to have like that calm, slow, deep breath work, you're going to do more yin, more relaxation based yoga. When you're working with perhaps clearing trauma or, deep emotion, the Kundalini, for example, can be really helpful for helping us identify, be with, and move through that experience. And of course, with meditation, our breath is a huge part of coming into that mindfulness. The breath is our sort of vehicle for coming into that presence, I believe. Especially how I use it. I like to work with embodied meditation. So it's very much about using that attention and that breath to drop into the body and into the somatic awareness of yourself and your connection with the world around you. The other pieces I wanted to say about breath is, of course, it's been very powerful with trauma work in and itself. With Peter Levine's work, going into sensory experiencing, somatic experiencing, um, which was kind of work that I was doing before there was a name for it. I was always drawn to guiding people to track sensation as a way to come into the body. And so, tracking sensations, we do that best with bringing that awareness with the breath. We know that idea of, where your attention goes, your breath goes, your energy goes. And it's true, right? When we can, if I have sore shoulders, which I kind of do right now, and I bring my breath to that soreness and just stay and hold a non judgmental awareness with it, the body has that wisdom to begin to hold space for that and allow it to shift and move. Now, that's different for everyone, how they experience that, but it's part of the intelligence of the body that when we bring awareness and breath and attention, we can create amazing alchemy, change, transformation. And I've seen and experienced that as well in the cutting edge trauma work that I've been studying called integral somatic psychology, where you again are bringing that awareness and breath and consciousness into the body to be more in relationship with your emotions, to build that capacity to feel, to fully embody your emotion, as opposed to being in shallow breath, disconnected. Now, why do we want that? That actually helps us not only process old emotion and experience that we haven't been able to process, but it also helps us build that capacity for staying in ourselves, in our lives. Now, why do we want to do that? Just in case we're not sure. Because I think so much of the technology is informing this idea that it's better to be out of reality, to be in this, fantasy world, to have your sexual experiences online with pornography, to not worry about having relationships, do everything, just technologically. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to fully embody, embrace, and engage in our lives. And we can't do that if we're not in our bodies, if we're not functioning as a mind, body, spirit, full dimensional human being. We're missing out, not only in our own lives, but we're missing out on showing up in the big world out there and being a part of the change that needs to happen. The culture has been a point of view that has created a lot of damage. This point of view of our values being about just getting things done and staying busy and making money and acquiring things and an idea of status. And that's what brings happiness. And we know, again, that's kind of a message I bring up again and again. But the truth that my experience is coming into our bodies, coming into our breath, our life force, our consciousness is what brings us to a level of happiness, a level of connection, a level of engaging our lives and connecting with other people. That's what I believe we're here for. So this alchemy of breath is rich, and you can know it not from the mind, but from actually experiencing it. So I'm going to share with you two breaths. One is just simply doing a deep breath. And we don't have time to do the full, complete breath. But if you're interested, again, get my book, Fearless, The Art of Using Anxiety to Your Advantage. I go right through it and step by step. Okay. So if we were going to just do a deep belly breath, we could bring our hands and just sort of lay them down on our low belly. And even if you can't breathe down into your low lungs and feel your belly rise, just imagine it. Just take that awareness inside, find your breath, and breathe in nice and slow and deep. And exhale nice and slow. And as you keep breathing, see if you can notice even just the slightest rise and fall in the belly. And then as you continue doing it, notice where you have tension and begin to disengage, like give permission for the body to drop down and relax, like shoulders, jaw, allowing the ribs to open, allowing the belly and the diaphragm to soften. And you can just do this like in the nose, out the mouth, so you really practice relaxing through the jaw. And then as you continue, just allow that breath to get a little deeper and deeper. Because as we practice, our lungs begin to expand beyond the normal, right? They say, oh, it's safe to breathe more. You want to breathe more right now? You're used to breathing really shallow. And so it's like a muscle. We want to practice relaxing and opening through the chest and down into the belly. And you want to do this a few times a day, because the more you allow your body to remember how to breathe like that and get out of its way, it will begin to do that on its own. It will remind you, oh, let's breathe deeply now. But it takes some practice, right? Just like you go to the gym and you get that muscle memory in your muscles. It's the same with breathing. And we literally need to practice it, because when we're out in the world, we're forgetting. We're not breathing. We're not in the body. Okay, and then the second breath I'm going to tell you about is the left nostril breath, which what's really cool to know is that your predominant nostril shifts on its own intelligence throughout the day. And this is why it's really helpful to keep your sinus hygiene really intact, whether that's using the neti pot, making sure you are maybe need an air purifier in your place, or um, be aware of not eating foods that get you congested, things like that, because this is how the body naturally um, supports the integrity of our health. The alternate nostril breathing is a way we actively support that happening. So we're just going to do left nostril, which means we hold the right closed and we breathe just in and out the left. And this is a breath I recommend in my book, because most of us are chronically engaged in our sympathetic nervous system, keeping us tense and hyper alert. And so this helps engage the relaxation response, which we want. We want that sense of safety so we can begin to breathe deep, which nourishes our whole body as well as our brain, as well as our spirit. So, left nostril breath is simply holding and breathing slow, long, and deep in and out the left. You can do it with me for a few more seconds. I can already feel like my body dialing down. Yeah, it's like we can always get better at this. And again, the practice is what really supports us. So I hope this was helpful, helping you have a greater understanding of the role of breath and the amazing alchemy of breath in being able to help support your body, shift your mind states, shift your moods, help you with that emotional regulation, help you with that anxiety, help you with your body's stress, especially when it comes to things like digestive distress, respiratory distress. These are things that can be very supported by conscious breathing, meaning I pay attention. I'm not just waiting for it to automatically suddenly be a deep breath. I'm going to engage my attention, my awareness, and presence with my breath. And this helps me utilize and connect with the power of my breath. All right. Well, really glad to be here with you. And if you want to share with me what this was like, feel free to find me on my Facebook page, Dr. Kate Dow. Um, and you can also email me at katedowphd@gmail.com. So many blessings to you and blessing on that journey of breathing a little better. And remember, it's your turn to find your voice, own your truth, and claim your power. All right, be well.